Whether we want to be involved in politics, talk about it, think about it, today we have to. And it does affect disability. In fact, what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now is devastating to the very existence of people with disabilities. So I'm Annette from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe, drop me a like, make some comments, and tell your friends. This is how I can continue to make this podcast grow. Today, I have a special honor, and I will be talking with, I have a conversation with Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island. You've heard me say before that one of the things that I am appreciative of, one of the things that gives me hope, is our congressional delegation. So let's get to part one of this discussion. So this podcast was never intended to be a political one. Mm-hmm. It is about disability inclusion, but with what's going on today, we have to be aware, and we're being slaughtered, all our disability rights. Yeah. So what gives me hope is that I'm from Rhode Island. Not only is that our motto, but the leaders we have in Rhode Island are really fighting back. From our senators, our representatives, and our Attorney General. I think Peter Nerone has done a really great job. So this morning, I am honored to have with me the dean of our leadership here, Senator Jack Reed. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay.
And thank you for what you did to advocate for disability rights. Thank you.
Well, we have to be doing it, and I'm capable, so I have a big mouth, so I do it. So, as you know, this sheer destruction in DC, and I refuse to refer to that person by name. I will after he's held accountable.
Yeah.
But the chaos, the abject cruelty of what is going on is pretty devastating, and a lot of it is affecting people with disabilities. We all know about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the hits to those programs. People will not live. I mean, this is not just going to harm our rights. This is going to cause death. And there's just no excuse, no reason for it. So those programs, and SNAP, because that affects people with disabilities as well, because we've not reached that equal point where we can really afford our own lives without losing other benefits. Yeah. And we're still in that. So cutting any of these, never mind all of them, is going to cause deaths. And we already have 1 in 4 people in the country with disability, and we're going to create a lot more with these hits, especially by removing vaccines. I mean, kids that get measles, if they survive, some will be deaf, some will have brain injuries, and oh God, if we cut back on polio vaccine, I remember the polio epidemic in the early 50s, and I remember the fear my parents had during that time, and know a lot of people that went through this. So how can we fight back? There are other things also now, even since I talked with Moira, the autism registry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ignorance, it's cruelty. What can we do as a disability population to fight back on all of this?
Well, if I was a good lawyer, I would say right now, I rest my case. You have summarized the challenges so wonderfully, and they are serious. It all originates from this notion of if there's chaos, then the president will rule. And rule is not an understatement.
Right.
No rule. what do we do? Well, here we mobilize, like you get the word out.
Right.
And we also go ahead and try to reach out, not just to those who are disabled, but to the whole community, because the cuts that affect disabled will also affect the able community, if you want to use that term.
Right.
One, they have relatives that will lose benefits, they'll have to step in.
Yeah.
Two, there are, for example, when we cut programs like SNAP, we're not only affecting disabled Americans, we're affecting young children. And by the way, if you have a medical issue as a child and it's not addressed, the chances of becoming disabled go up exponentially.
Right.
So we're going to increase the number of people that need help as we take that hope away. It's just crazy, but that's what he does, because for him this is about power, ego, and self benefits. I mean, the extraordinary things he's doing to enrich himself and his family using the government is just, we've never seen a president like that before. But what we have to do more than locally is we've got to reach out nationally, because you know, I'm lucky. I've got colleagues like Sheldon and Seth and Gabe who are terrific. But we've got to get out to your friends in the red states and say, have you talked to your senator? Have you been able to sit down with him or your congressman or woman and said, hey, this is going to hurt me. This is going to hurt the whole community. That's key, because when they hear it coming from their constituents, it's no longer this high-level political banter back and forth. It's they're home and they're angry, and I want to stop it.
Right. You know, and that makes me wonder, though, why the Republican Party is not responsive. I know that originally, okay, he's going to primary us, he has the money, etc., and we'll lose our jobs. But they're going to lose their jobs anyway by staying this way. I've seen how angry those people are. And they could not, even if they had the money, finding the people to primary them. And they didn't win the last couple.
No, they did not win in Wisconsin, the Supreme Court race, which I hope is indicative of what's happening. But this administration does not use old-fashioned political sort of pressure, like, do you want that post office? You better vote for this bill. It's, one, we're going to take you out in a primary. That makes people nervous. Two, you know, we've done research and we found that, you know, when you were 18, you got stopped for speeding, and we're going to get that out there. And then much beyond that. And then this network, this dot network for people on social media are, you know, they get the president's tweet saying, or somebody else's tweet saying, you know, Senator so-and-so is undercutting President Trump. Some of them go out and, you know, we know where your kids are and all this stuff. It's a really different world. And the Senate, I can speak for the Senate, I think is divided into three not equal branches. One is those people who've really shown remarkable courage, like Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, who stands up and says what she thinks. Second, there are those who've been around for a while and understand this is a disaster for the country, not for one party, for the country. But then there are a significant number of newer members who are really MAGA diehards. They're very wealthy themselves, many of them, and they just want to see taxes go down, and they think Trump is their, you know, they believe this stuff. So that's going to be harder to get those folks, but the real pressure point comes from their constituents. You're right.
Right. Yeah. So if we maybe, you know, keep track of those diehards and have their constituents, you know, and have their constituents, you know, come out in force. I'm not thinking of using the tactics.
No, we can't use the tactics.
No,
they're un-American, frankly.
Right, it is.
What it's the old-fashioned days. Okay, you can make up your mind. Well, that post office is important to me, but it's more important to vote for this ADA to make sure it's strong and helpful and functional. So I'm with the ADA. Right.
And that is under attack.
It is.
You know.
It is.
You know, I know that the lawsuit in Texas has been paused.
Yes.
But it's not been withdrawn.
No, and what's happening is there's lawsuits all over the country. They're being filed daily in
Right.
response to what the president is doing daily.
Right.
But the Supreme Court, I believe, is sitting back and waiting for a case that they can come out and be very forceful, very clear, very direct about the limitations of the president's power. And I hope, again, this court does it.
I hope so,
Yes.
because they're kind of partly to blame for this mess.
Well, not partly. They have
they've got a lot of blame
fundamentally changed
Yeah.
the Citizens United case, allowed unlimited money. I just
Yeah.
saw this morning that 200 billionaires in the United States contributed over $2 billion to the Trump campaign. That's a huge amount of money.
Yeah, right.
And we used to have control, so money was not as critical. It was the quality of the candidates and the issues that they were advancing.
Right, what they stood for.
Right.
Right. I mean, I hear people saying we're heading towards a constitutional crisis, and I'm heading for it. I think we're right smack in the middle of one.
No, to a degree, we are, but it's so far, I think we still have first the court to stand up, and then the question would be, and I hope he does, would he follow the direction of the court? Every other president has, and then. If not, then it goes back to the Senate and the House, because impeachment is the only vehicle to
Right.
stop a president who is defying the law.
Right. Well, that's why we're counting on people like you.
Well, we're every day we're working.
Yes.
and-
I'm aware of that, and I see it. I may be of a certain age, but I'm aware of what's. I think keep able to keep up online.
You're mature.
Well, there you go.
I'm mature also.
Yes, I'm a little more mature
Okay,
than you.
Young at heart.
Yes. Oh, for
Both
sure.
young at heart.
For sure. I do have a good energy, and that's one of the reasons I do this.
Yeah.
And I do know when people fight back, there is some backing down.
Yes, no, we've seen it. We've
Yeah.
seen it in specific cases where he has announced, for example, just last week, they said, okay, we're not going to cancel all of the visas for foreign students in the United States.
Yeah.
Because the pressure is building. These students have been vetted. They come in the United States. Oh, and by the way, they add tremendously to our educational experience.
Right.
And then, you'd like to see some of them who are trained to be a physician stay here in Rhode Island to do it.
Yes.
So to just, send them out,
Right.
that doesn't make a lot of sense. This country was literally built by immigrants. I mean,
Right.
they came
yes.
here. If you go back far enough.
I know my grandparents were born in another country.
Yeah. I have to go back to the 1850s and 60s, but my
Yeah.
grandparents came from Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think one side came a bit from England, but they came in
Yeah.
and they worked hard, and they built a great country.
Well, this is it. And while we're not perfect, we do have a constitution. We are a country of laws. And that's the scary part is not having people follow these laws.
No, it's that's what happens is he keeps lowering the bar,
Right.
lowering the bar. Even the debate, the language we use today, even the Senate is much further and much more degraded than when I first got there, where you
Right.
this was a body that's the greatest deliberative body in the world, etc.
Right.
And what he's done now is, he's lowered it so much that he gets away with things that other presidents would be, oh my God. For
Right.
example, this is a small point, but, all of the visitors to the Pope's funeral were asked to wear a black suit and honor the Pope. He shows up in a blue suit.
Right.
It's all that just, I'm different than, I'm better than everybody else.
Right.
Outrageous. And, we can't do that. We have to become a
Right.
country of laws again.
Right. And I hope that, once we get out of it's going to, just the damage that's been done so far is going to take years and
You're right.
years
No.
to recover
right.
from. But we do need to build back toward what we had, and this time put up more guardrails.
Yes.
Um,
No, you're exactly right. This is long-term damage. This is not
Yeah.
just something, oh, well, we'll just stop this and we'll be okay.
Right. If it's stopped today, it might take a whole generation for some of it to come back.
No, you're right. I
And
mean,
that's-
he's dismantling the global economy, and
Right.
there are faults in that economy which we can correct. But taking it apart is going to alienate our friends. I mean, there's an election in Canada today, and generally they're so upset about the United States and his comments particularly
Right.
that I think they'll elect someone who's swore that he'd fight every step of the way to prevent Trump from impinging on their sovereignty. So it's
Right.
it's just who would have thought that we would be fighting with Canada?
I mean, really, yeah. I have family in Canada.
No, I was I was at Providence College for the dedication of their remarkable new nursing center.
Right.
It's absolutely superb and modern technology, AI, etc. But I didn't. Father Saccard, the president, is Canadian too.
Yeah.
And and here's one of the great leaders of our universities,
Right.
who's he must feel a kind of like, whoa, well, they can't say that about in my country.
Right.
He said
Exactly.
two countries, the United
Right.
States and Canada.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've got Canada, France, and Ireland because they're Celtic French.
Yes,
so
I know.
so we've got all of that. But
Well,
we are
I
citizens
look
of the
Portuguese,
world.
so I assume somewhere in my lineage there was
Yeah.
a survivor from the Great Armada who washed up at Ireland,
Right.
and
Right.
So that's why I don't look Irish.
Yeah. But the thing is, we are citizens of the planet.
Yes.
And that is something that we always will be.
Mhm.
We can't change that. That's our heritage, our lineage.
To your point about the long-term damage, just the environmental policies
Oh
so
God, yes.
is going to, I have a senior in high school, and her life is going to be much more complicated because of climate change, because of
Right.
all these things.
Right.
And then also it has an economic impact. He's basically canceled all the offshore wind, and the Port of Providence was one of the construction sites for the components of the towers.
Right.
Those are good, solid jobs.
Yeah.
And one, we won't have the energy. Two, we don't have the jobs. It's
Right.
he's batting 0 for 4.
Well, you're right. You're right. And we know more and more about what's going on and what is destructive to the planet. I think that my education is environmental economics.
Well, you know
Yeah.
better than most.
So,
Yeah.
you see this, and we're discovering just the amount of microplastics that are in our bodies already permanently.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we start paying attention.
Well, that's
And-
true. I'll give you an example of that. URI has received funding, I think, through NIH or the National Science Foundation to do research on the physical impacts of microplastics
Right. Yes.
in the bay.
Right.
And they're doing all this research. They stopped that research, and 5 years from now, when we start seeing, diseases or acceleration of disease, and
Mhm.
we don't know the cause, and it
Right.
could possibly be the presence of microplastics in your body. So,
Right.
I mean, this is just
Well,
dumb.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There are times I've said, using the word ignorant because it's derogatory in some sense, and try to use uninformed. But this is ignorant, and in this case, it is ignorant.
Well, let me tell you, I mean, we prided ourselves in being the world leader in the knowledge economy.
Right.
All the new innovations,
Right.
biotechnology, quantum computing, cyber, etc.
Right.
His attacks on universities and NIH and the National Science Foundation
Right.
is turning this into the ignorance economy.
Right.
China is just they're just feeling great because they're investing significantly in scientific research
Right.
and all sorts of new categories of research. My sense, again, he's trying to take away the incentives for electric vehicles. The Chinese, I think, over a few years from now, will
Oh yeah.
improve batteries and sell cars
Right.
that everyone wants to buy, and our American industry will be sitting there. You remember, it happened in the 70s with the
I do
Japanese
remember.
cars.
Right. Exactly.
Because of the oil embargo, OPEC,
Right. Yeah.
You know, these big American cars that got 10 gallons to the mile, or
Yeah.
10 miles to gallon, excuse me,
Yeah.
10 miles to the gallon.
Yeah.
Suddenly people were looking for Toyotas and everything else, and they couldn't find them. And
Right.
Japan dominated, it started to dominate the world automobile industry.
Right.
It's going to happen again, and it's,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, yeah, it will. Thank you for listening. I'm Annette Bourbonnier from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. This conversation with Senator Reid is so important that I did not want to cut any of it out. So I have broken it into two parts so that we can manage to keep all the information in here. He's been very helpful, very resourceful, and he's been giving us some really good information. So if you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe, drop me a like, drop some comments, and please tell your friends. Your friends can find me patreon.com/nothingwithoutus. I'll be there. You can also find me on YouTube and on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky. And so until the next Nothing Without Us, I'm Annette.